Hello everyone, Fade Salvation fading in, and today I have my usual co-hosts, hostesses, host, I don't know. We got John, Nova Blast,
I'll be your
S.
hostess tonight if you like. Sure. I don't need to be a host. I can be a hostess.
we
I'm
got,
secure in my masculinity.
we got LA,
What up, though? What up?
and we have a new, guest, I guess, called Touch Sensitive Studios.
Hey,
Welcome.
thank you.
Yeah, yeah. I officially just boomered this again. I tried to freaking play my logo and I couldn't freaking play it. It said fail to load.
That's
I'm gonna
crazy.
hit it right now, just see if it. Of course it works now.
It's
After the
StreamYard.
freaking
StreamYard's been a bitch lately, so
after it does the countdown. Of course. Anyway, how you guys doing this week? Anyway. Oh
I'm
wait,
good. I'm
hold on.
good.
doing good. I'm gonna play the Avatar game because nobody else is on camera, so why
Oh,
should I
I
be?
was gonna change to my actual face in just a second here. I was gonna say fading in, John, and then you ruined it.
All right. Fading in.
So, anyway, how's everyone else doing on this lovely Friday, evening for me, I guess?
Just glad the
Chilling.
weekend is here finally.
About to work on some pages for our guest tonight.
Oh,
About to
nice.
start page 14 through 16. We're on book two, and it's been a fun adventure. And he can tell you guys more about the book.
Cool.
Okay.
So, yeah, the book's title Libratus, and then Obsessio Part 1, which
Mm-hmm.
is already done, just waiting on printing and then, getting the mailing list and all that and going on Indiegogo.
Mm-hmm.
But it's pretty much about the human condition and the swings, good to evil, and what, I don't want to say this, how people just don't stop. They just keep going and going and pushing and
Mm-hmm.
pushing. No matter what side of the fence, it's the swings are never good. So this
Mm.
is about, well, libratus is Latin for balance.
Mm-hmm.
So it's really about fighting the extremes on both sides. Like, just it's evil either way you go.
Mm.
And
Interesting.
so basically, it's about um, the scientist, rogue military, well, admiral, and they had found this ancient secret,
Mm-hmm.
and they call it the Obsessio, which is this liquid that pretty much lets you basically allow you to do anything you want.
Mm.
It can manipulate matter. Um, Whatever it is that you want to do, it will allow you to do it. And so the
So
secrets were lost, but they found another way to do it. And one of the main bad guys, Dr. Volsiv, finds this, and they start doing these experiments, but they don't know where they're going. And it's creating a lot of chaos throughout, multiple galaxies because it's got ramifications everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
And basically, they send a Marine Recon team to see what's going on with this corridor of ships, transport ships. They're all just getting jacked. And there's no rhyme or reason to it. So they send in a deep reconnaissance team, and that's where the story takes off. Um, and they get jacked.
interesting. Yeah, I
And
like your
so
setup.
that story's about, yeah, and it's about him barely surviving and runs into native female on this planet, and I don't want to give too much away, but it's nonstop. Um, and he has no idea what the heck's going on, and it's roller coaster from there. And then book 2 just takes right off. Like it is nonstop. There's no time lapse of a year or two. So everything that you're going to be seeing in these first few books is just nonstop action. It's not like a traditional comic book where you see you can read Amazing Spider-Man and it's a 25-page book and you're done. You can read just one story, you know what I mean? So this is like I guess more like a saga, so it's pretty wicked. And then
you could have some conflict in each arc, right? You don't want to just
oh yeah, no, you're not gonna. You've got subplots, so it's not like a long dragged out thing where it just, you know what I mean, where it gets too much and you're waiting for the payoff. But no, each one, it does end on, what is it called?
Like a cliffhanger, or
yes, thank you. Yeah, each book will land on a cliffhanger. You're actually able to see, it's just not one-sided where you're seeing, the pro character. You actually get to see the bad guys. Kind of like traditional, G.I. Joe, when you can see G.I. Joe and Cobra, and you can see Cobra Commander, Storm Shadow, them interacting. So you get that aspect too.
So I got a question. Hey, Mark, tell me what would you like to be? Because normally I'm pretty sure you'll be a guest on the show once the book launches, and you will have time to prep. But this was a on the spot thing, so normally you would have sent the host some images to share. So since we haven't done that, is there any images that you would like from book 1?
Do you want me to send them to you through Twitter?
No, because then I gotta get out of the show. But I could actually pull up some images that you want to be shown.
Oh, well,
so you can discuss those.
Yeah,
pages.
Let me pull up the.
And I like how you have a bit of a Pandora's box element to the story too, with this this liquid that can allow you to make your dreams come true, or make anything possible. And that's always been a very powerful theme in stories, right? Is like kind of like the Pandora's box aspect of, well, you could use it for good, you could use it for evil, but at the end of the day, you're kind of unleashing the something from potentially from the fiery pits of hell, and you don't know it, right? Like it could be a blessing in disguise, or it could be a total curse, right? So
yeah,
a lot of room for story with that.
Yeah, you definitely can go in multiple directions. So yeah, it's a lot of fun. Do you?
Yeah, just give me the page number and I'll pull it up.
I'm just trying to.
Page or pages.
Well, we could do page 4.
Okay, hold on. Let me pull it up. Let me plug my phone in because
we'll be sure to do like a proper show off and everything once we're all ready and stuff, because this was a little kind of off the cuff, but it's interesting to get a bit of a tease on this story and see what's coming up, because I love looking at LA's art. So how long have you been writing, Mark? How is this something that you're just getting into now, or have you done any writing in the past?
Yes and no. I've been writing for a long time. Normally I do music. But this book I have been with for quite a long time, and then life gets in the way, going on tour and all that stuff, and then finally getting settled back into like a normal life. And just started thinking about all the old books and comics, and so I wanted to figure out what was new. And then I stumbled into the proverbial, what storm, and ran into Ethan, your boy.
So you've declared as CG, you're fully committed, or are you just like
I have
CG
been for like the last 3 or 4 years when I started getting into books again, and I was like, well, what is new out there? Because I'm pulling out Silver Age, 80s, 90s stuff, and I'm going, all right, well, what's new? And like I said, what was his name? Captain Cummings. Like we're talking years ago. And
when
I'm like,
he was
what?
Pretty straight up guy, but now he's a bit of a traitor. But
yeah, and whatever happened, I can't follow the end stuff, so I catch what I can, right? And I'm like, what is this real? I couldn't believe that comics had went into the garbage. Like the whole everything just went tits up, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yep.
And
well, it's certainly like a smaller percentage of the mainstream market is worth it. Like I still collect quite a bit of mainstream stuff. Obviously, like back issues are my focus and my priority, but there's still good stuff on the shelves every week. It's just you really got to look harder for it, and you got to be really careful about what you get sucked into, because obviously they're always like, oh, this is a brand new, we're rebooting this, or it's a new character, or this is going to get optioned for Netflix, and you can't get too drawn into the hype. You just kind of have to, like anything, it's like, don't judge a book on its cover, because that's another thing. They just want to sell you variant covers and stuff.
That was the problem with the 90s for me, is finding the awesome artist, and they would never do the interiors.
Right. Yeah, I hate that too. Where
that drove me. That's one of the things that actually drove me away from it. But then, yeah, you're right. The new stuff, it just, I couldn't get into it. And then I saw Ethan's his Michael's stream, where he went to Michael's and picked up you know what?
Yeah, that's the same.
And he had this
it's
positive
so funny. I think
energy,
a lot of people discovered him that way, because that was one. It came up in my feed because I watched a lot of other comic channels and stuff, and for whatever reason, that was just in the recommended, And then I went back and I started watching all of his old stuff, and I was like, okay, this is cool. Like, and I think I had even seen a few of his videos and other comics, like your boy Zach and stuff, but I didn't really put two and two together that it was like this burgeoning new movement. I just thought, oh, these are just some YouTubers that are into comics and criticizing and stuff like that. But then, once I started watching EVS's stuff pretty much daily, because I was kind of going back and watching his older interviews and stuff like that, I realized, okay, these guys are onto something. Like, there's really like kind of an underground movement going on here. And this was exactly what I was looking for too. So yeah, ever since, it's been like 3 years for me too. And I've been in, watching all the videos in the chat and everything, and now going online and doing videos myself for the last year or so, and working on my own book and stuff. So yeah, it's really kind of an interesting ecosystem in comics that I think gets totally maligned for all the wrong reasons, like they just want to.
Yeah. And like I said, he just had that positive energy. And like I just kept hearing your voice saying EVS, and never thought anything of it. And then, like you said, that Michael's one just popped up on the stream, and I was like, you know what? I need to bring out my book again, because it was actually a novel. So I went through.
That's funny you say that. That's how it was with me too. I was writing a kind of a novel, or at least that was the idea, right? It was more of just like a big manuscript that I hadn't really put in any solid form, but now I'm just, no, this is actually a comic. Like, what I'm imagining here would work better as a comic. I'm never going to be able to make a movie of it, probably. Nobody really reads novels anymore, so yeah, do something a little more visual. I think that's a good idea.
So yeah, I converted it to a book and started and then listening to mail-in, and and then you go down that rabbit hole, and then it's just nonstop. And then at one point, it just got to be too much. It's like, all right, I can't,
keep up with everything.
Yeah.
All the different streams and all the different channels and shows and stuff. And yeah, you got to kind of really pick and choose. And
so, yeah, I just, battened down the hatches, and then really got to work on the script. And it took me, I don't know how many months to convert it to a script. Going from a novel, which it's all words, and then you got to cut it back. I mean, talk about trimming fat and everything for the artist was just, it was a whole new.
Yeah, it's a different language almost, you know.
It is.
Yeah, because I've studied like screenwriting too for film, and you know, there's obviously that has its own kind of universal format for how you write a movie, and even the themes or the kind of the structure of a film, but it doesn't necessarily translate to a comic the same way, even though the scripting process is very similar. But you do have to really learn the language of comics. You have to be very familiar with comics and know and be able to see it in your mind's eye. Like, what does each page look like?
So, a question. So, what page? What you said? Page 4.
Yeah.
And what else?
Let's do 13.
Cover.
Oh yeah, I gotta do the cover.
All right.
Just do the cover and page 4. That's fine.
All right, cool.
Have you publicly put out any of the art or any of the stuff, or is this a bit of a premiere?
Not yet. No, you're going to be the
sweet
first. Nice. I'm working on cutting a promo here, so just the whole video. The audio side, I'm fine with. It's the video that's. So I picked up Corel Studio and trying to get this thing going so I can put it out there.
I forgot how crazy this cover was, because like when I work on stuff, I just release it. So like I'll work on 6 pages, and I'll turn 3 pages into Mark, and then after that, I don't look at those pages. And like just like the last book, I will not look at all the pages until the book is done, because you know you got to go back and do corrections and stuff like that. So. Like, I really forgot how crazy this cover was. All right, so let me show the cover first. I'm going to turn my camera on.
Okay. I'll go ahead and...
Can you guys see that?
Yep.
Yeah, give me just a second. I'll embiggen you. There we go.
Very cool.
Nice.
Yeah, that looks great.
That's a cool cover.
I like the logo, too. It's got a good logo. Which is another thing I find lacking in Comicsgate is there's a lot of really lackluster logos, but...
Oh, that's actually 2 people. 3D Robin did the Libratus, and Kim did the Obsessio.
Nice.
Oh, nice.
So, yeah, it turned out pretty wicked.
All right, so then we go to page 4.
Okay.
Let me zoom in a little bit.
Okay.
Because those are the gutters are kind of huge. Can you guys see? Take it right there. You guys see that?
Pretty good. Yep.
Yeah. Nice.
You got a bit of action going on in space.
On here and everything.
What's that? I'm sorry.
Say again, Fade.
Oh, I was saying I love the color work and all that. How all the colors kind of make like the center thing right here kind of pop.
Oh, the explosion.
Yeah, the explosion. I wasn't sure if that was an explosion or if that was something emerging from a capsule. Oh wait, no, I'm seeing the shit. Oh my god.
I'm gonna zoom in a little.
Yeah. Yeah, I see the spaceship on the bottom now. But man, that is... Damn.
And space scenes aren't easy in comics either. That's
they are not.
Like, it's very easy to get them wrong or not give them a sense of scale, right? Because I mean, space is about as big as it gets, and now you're trying to fit it on this tiny little page, right, and show some expansiveness, and it can be a challenge, I'm sure.
It's just trying to, because you know the thing about space is that all we see is darkness. So you know, space has a lot more color. The further you go, the deeper you go into it. So it's just about trying to emulate some of those colors and then muting them to push. Because if you notice the universe is kind of muted, but it pushes the space shuttle forward.
Exactly. Yeah, no, you did a good job there. Totally, LA. I'm liking it. Yeah, this is cool. This is like a good little preview. You know, I'm definitely excited to see more. So, and I think there definitely needs to be more kind of like sci-fi superhero stuff. Like, I think most modern superhero comics have an element of sci-fi to them in some sense, mostly because of the technology or the world setting and stuff. But there's not a lot of like, because I'm kind of doing a book that's a little more hard sci-fi, where there is a superhero element to it that'll kind of come into play more as the book goes on. I'm not necessarily like structuring it as a strictly superhero book. Like in my world setting, it allows for almost any genre, whether it's superheroes, horror, straight historical fiction, whatever, just based off of the world it takes place in. But that's something that I think, you know, it works. Like the modern audiences, that's something that they like. They like superheroes, they like sci-fi, they like technology.
I'm kind of working on mine a little bit, at least. Mine's probably going to be more superhero, if anything. But I'm trying to work on a sci-fi kind of spin on it as well, so.
Faye, you doing a book?
I'm working on one a little bit.
Nice.
I've been here and there. John knows of it. I kind of talked to him in the wind about it once or twice.
Still we just got to get a little more on, you know, like I said, we'll, you got lots of time, like don't rush it or anything like that. But we're thinking about putting together like a bit of maybe like a brainstorming stream or like a once a month type of thing where we just, you know, kind of shout at the clouds kind of thing and just talk about ideas. And because sometimes it's easier for some people, like I find myself, like I can write stuff on my own, but I find if I'm talking to other people about it, the ideas start to crystallize better in my mind. And you know, because you're kind of bouncing things off of someone and you can kind of get their impression, like are they jiving with this, or is this kind of like going over their head kind of thing, right? So it's a good way to kind of gauge, am I going in the right direction with this, or is this kind of a bit of a, you know, exercise in futility, you know? Or so and that's the tough thing as a first-time writer, right? It's like you kind of have your own ideas of what you want to do, but at the end of the day, it's kind of a business. It's a creative business, so you have to have a bit of that, like what is the end product going to actually look like? Who is my audience? You know, what am I trying to do different that other people haven't done? Or, you know, what am I trying to give people that they've never gotten? So what would you say are some of your influences, Mark, on like what other books did you like growing up that, you know, that you're trying to either emulate, or you're trying to like, you know, be part of that pantheon, or are you trying to do like totally your own thing and it's not really connected with anything else?
It's
a bit of a spiritual influence on the book.
As far as comic books go, probably not but the art, like for comics, I mean, like the stories obviously have to be good. The writing has to be good. But when I, you know, was younger, excuse me, the artist is what got me. So it didn't matter how good if good the writing was, if the art wasn't there, I was hesitant to get it. My first book, in fact, well, my favorite artist actually is now Lakem, but before that was Mark Silvestri. And it was an Uncanny X-Men. I'm trying to figure out.
Appreciate that.
It was the one where Wolverine was hanging upside down. Oh, what number was it? Like 130 or something, Uncanny X-Men. But when I saw that, I was hooked. You know, I had Spider-Man books, Batman books, all that stuff, but it was Mark Silvestri that just grabbed me. And then all of a sudden I got hooked in, and with 4, you know, huge boxes, back of boards, you know what I mean? You went down that, again, the rabbit hole, get all the trading cards, you know, and then branched out, and Jim Lee was, you know, another huge one for me that got all their stuff. And then obviously Todd and And
yeah,
then,
all those image founders, you can't really go wrong with any of those guys.
No. And then there was like Will Portaccio, loved him. But then what really got me, and this is when I found Jay Lee. Like just, the Hell Shock, all that stuff. And then, which kind of, when I started looking for artists, because I was scared. Like, are you going to get, number one, robbed? Is, the artist going to flake out? Is the artist going to be good enough? Can he actually do interiors? And someone, I guess, reached out to Lakem, but he showed me his art, and his inks for the stuff that he was showing me reminded me of Jay Lee. And I was like, you gotta be kidding me. So, and that's how I ran into him. But yeah, Mark Silvestri, Jim Lee, Todd, John Byrne, trying to think of even just looking at the old classic stuff, obviously you got to give it to those guys, but like I said, it was the guys in the 80s that really got me hooked.
Absolutely. Yeah, I'm kind of in the same boat too, where I think a lot of that too has to come from those artists being comic fans themselves too. Like I imagine almost everybody working in comics started out as a fan, but nowadays, we were talking earlier about the modern comics, like it seems like they find a lot of these Tumblr artists and the animators who did the old the Cal art style and stuff like that, like very cartoony, and so it doesn't really translate well to the Western superhero genre, and that's, I think, a big reason. Not just the writing, but I think the art is pretty lackluster. There's not a lot of it just doesn't jump out at you the same way a lot of those artists did. And Silvestri is one of those interesting guys too. Do you know the story about how he never really wanted to be a comic book artist? He was, like, the story I've heard is he was hanging out at a bar with some friends one night or something like that, and he just started doodling on a napkin at the bar. And one of his buddies, I think, was like a comic fan, and I don't know what he drew exactly. He just drew they were talking about something, and he just drew some superhero, like probably just like Superman or Batman or something like that. And the friend was blown away. Like, wow, like, you're a good artist. Like, why are you not doing this professionally? He's like, I'm not even an artist. Like, apparently he wasn't even really into drawing that much. He just kind of was a doodler, right? And it was kind of on a bet or like a dare almost from a friend, where he's like, you should really go and, talk to somebody at Marvel or one of these companies, and that's it. He just basically got into the comic industry on a total whim, never having had any impetus to like get into comics, and next thing you know, the guy's doing Uncanny X-Men, and and then years later he's an image founder and stuff like that. And I still think some of his anatomy, like among that whole class of guys, whether it's McFarlane, Jim Lee, Larson, all those guys, like Silvestri has some of the most dynamic character poses and some of the best anatomy of any of that generation of artists, even though he had a very kind of quick style. Like if you look at a lot of that Uncanny X-Men stuff, it's very loose and very, kind of gestural compared to the more refined quality of some of the other image artists. But that's the strength of Silvestri, is he's kind of got that real, I don't want to say it's gritty, but it's just a little bit more grounded than some of, like, he's not quite as exaggerated as some of those other artists are. And that's why people don't even really mention like Cyberforce from that image era, or like everyone always kind of goes back to the Marvel stuff that Silvestri did, but they don't really bring up a lot of the image stuff that he worked on.
Yeah, but he just keeps getting better and better. He doesn't flatline.
Awesome. Yeah.
And he doesn't get depressed. You can see these guys running out of energy when they're writing. It's like a musician that just gets tired of writing, and you can hear it in their playing. And some of these guys, they just, it's like, at that point, why don't, go off on a strong note. Just, you know what I mean? If you're getting tired of it, take a break. But he just kept getting better and better. And, here's another one. The Cybernary, Nick Manabat.
Oh, yeah.
That was a crazy style. I love that.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I mean,
yeah, he doesn't get brought up a lot. You don't hear a lot of people mention him.
I don't understand it, but he was phenomenal.
He's got a unique style too, for sure.
Yeah.
Touch, I have a question. What kind of favorite sci-fi show or movie helped kind of get you interested on making this kind of comic, or anything that kind of helped launch this on?
So I can't tell if he's trying to be careful and he doesn't want to give away any trade secrets. He's gonna be like, "Well, if I tell him this and this and that, they're gonna know where I got all my ideas from."
There's no real.
Was it just like out of the blue one day or something?
I mean, I've always just a fan of all of that stuff, so it's hard.
Probably,
to
know that's what, I mean, what I'm kind of getting from.
I mean, when you break it down, I mean, you're gonna see stuff. You know, you're talking like Sir Arthur Conan Doyle. You know, the writing is gonna go from there all the way to Hayek and all the. You're gonna find a wide berth of influence, all the way to Predator, say the movie, you know what I mean?
Right.
Like really the only one to me, but trying to think, like I've even jumped out of movies and I just got kind of tired of everything. They don't make movies like, Eraserhead anymore.
Right.
Altered States.
I'm kind of into a lot of the same stuff I am too. I like a lot of the weirder stuff too. So
yeah,
and it's funny how like stuff that doesn't seem connected with what you're trying to do, how it can be an influence. Because I'm the same way. Like David Lynch is probably one of my favorite filmmakers. All around, and he's a bit of a pill to swallow too. Like that's why he's not super mainstream, right? Because he does things his own way. He's got that whole kind of transcendental philosophy about where did the ideas actually come from, and he's not even really sure what his ideas mean before he puts them down on paper or puts them on film, right? It's like they kind of have it's like a dream quality, right? That takes on a life of its own. And I think that's really what every writer or artist is looking to achieve, right? Is like, you want to be surprised by your own ideas. You don't want to be completely like in control of everything, of every aspect of it. You want there to be some, not random, that's not the right word, but kind of some
intangible
aspect or emergent aspect of the story that just kind of like comes from somewhere and you're not really sure where, but it's uniquely your voice or vision or whatever that you have that just kind of like it manifests from all the other things that you've been influenced by, right? And you just kind of let it happen. So yeah, that's a good
City of Lost Children, Terry Gilliam, Baron von Munchausen, Brazil. Like I love all the, I don't want to say B movies, but all the underground cult classic type stuff where I couldn't even tell you if do they even make these movies anymore?
Not really, no, because all the movies you've mentioned have a bit of a surreal aspect to them, right? Where it's like what is real and what is not real, is kind of mixed together in those films, and it's a hard thing to achieve in a film, let alone in a comic. That's the other thing. I think maybe comics maybe lend a little bit more for it because of the art style, like the artists, that's where they can shine and kind of really, because again, a lot of things with comics, right, is like panel layout and like how the story progresses and the viewpoints and things like that. In a film, it's always kind of like the camera is just taking the place of someone else's eyes. Whereas with a comic, you can be a little more impressionistic with a comic or a little more, abstract. But yeah, I'm curious now to see, where your story goes, because I like that when it's like a little bit of everything thrown into the soup, and then
John, for some reason, I thought you had like one of those Orthodox hats on for some odd reason.
What do you mean Orthodox?
like one of those round hats or something.
Oh, okay, no.
For
like
some
I'm
odd
Amish
reason,
or something.
I'm like.
I do need to up my hat game though. I mean, if Comicsgate is a hat group, I don't have nearly enough hats. Like that's the funny thing is I'm always looking for like weird and wacky hats at the thrift store and stuff like that, but it's like everyone always beats me to it. Like I can't find any. It's always just some random like bowler hat that's all beat up or something, and it's like, no, I want like a big like 20-gallon cowboy hat or like a sombrero or something like that, like a pink sombrero. But no, I never find that.
I mean, you can be like me,
bearded
and
cyborg.
mask.
Yeah, go bearded cyborg for us.
Yeah, that. Or I found this kind of interesting too. One day, my old like little Dodgers hair.
I was about to say that looks like it's come from a sport.
Yeah.
Is that like a mohawk thing you put on your head, or what is that, or is it just?
It's just like a hair hat kind of thing.
See? Put that on. Check it. Let's check it out.
I'm quiet because I'm actually my time between. Okay, here's how it goes. This is my work schedule. I'll send Mark pencils, and then I'll send him inks, and then from the inks, I go flats and then color, and then I turn the pages in. But during that time, Mark is prepping the next 3 pages of script for me to turn into the book pages. So it's rare space, but I'm actually drawing right now, not the script because we had to revise the script and make corrections, but I'm actually doing Fractober. Cool. Tonight is Tank Girl. Because I get.
Oh fuck! I love Tank Girl, man. I know I haven't been like watching it. I feel like I'm not going to toot my own horn or anything like that, but Fragtober is very special to me. I have the very first Fragtober drawing. Last year when Fraga started it, on day 1, I sent him the word elder, and he picked my thing, and I've got the artwork. So I have the very first piece of art.
Oh, that's dope.
Did as for Fragtober.
Yeah.
And so I watched pretty much all last year, but this year I've been super busy this last week. I've only caught a couple of them. Like I've been poking in on the streams and checking out the results afterward. But I was in like the chat all last year and stuff like that, and got on a couple of the live shows. But now I'm just like, fuck, man, where's this month going? Like
this year, it feels like it's grown significantly since last year. I mean, there's a lot more people on there, and it's.
Oh, it's a lot more professional, a lot more, a lot more planned out, because last year was just, fly by the seat of his pants. But this year
I like
more planned.
This year, too, only 1 suggestion per person instead of, it being multiple things. I kind of like that a little bit better because then now everyone's kind of got a chance to.
Exactly. There were a couple guys last year that were doing like they'd literally send 15-20 suggestions on the same night, and it's like just spread it out a bit, dude, because you're like kind of like hogging even in the first half hour of the show when he's trying to pick, like you're just making it hard for Dan and everybody else to pick something when you're throwing like everything in the kitchen sink at him. But
hold on, I'll be right back.
Did you got okay? I was gonna say,
what was that?
You got yours too, Fade, right? Didn't you?
Yeah, I was gonna show it in just a sec. Cool. I was getting my light on.
Yeah, because I was like,
Fade. He's another positive one.
Oh, I love Fraga. Yeah,
he's just fun to watch.
Super nice guy too. Like honestly, like if you ever get a chance to go on one of his streams, or if you ever have questions, like you can totally DM him and he's just totally approachable, totally nice. Like I didn't expect him, just from a few interactions early on that he would ever even remember who I was, but he totally like, he makes a point of like getting to know people, remembering people if you post in chat and stuff like that. Like that's what CG's all about, right? It's like, it's not so much about like, oh, the creators are up here on this level and the customers or the fans are on a level below. It's kind of like, it's all about everybody kind of being on the same level. And
that's what I loved CG is the fact that there's no class warfare.
Right.
You know what I mean? It's about putting out the best product that you can.
Yeah, it's people a true meritocracy, right? It's like may the best man win kind of thing, right? And that's why even with the friendly competition between the campaigns, it's fun to watch, right? Because none of these people are really truly trying to beat each other, right? They're just trying to up each other's game, and they're trying to make it fun for everybody that's watching and buying the books
when
and
you're
stuff.
when you're having fun with it, that's awesome. But for me, like, being a fan and a customer, Mark Silverstreet and Todd McFarlane, Jim Lee, Jay Lee, those guys were not competing with each other because they all earned my business.
Right.
From when I was 10 years old and up. And if I found out these guys were fighting like, just idiots trying to outdo each other, screw each other over, I would have been pretty ticked off, and I probably would have walked away.
Right.
And that's how, all these guys need to treat it is, you're not in competition. You have a good book. There's how many CG books that are out there. A customer is not going to come in and go, well, there's 20 CG guys, I'm only going to buy one. That's not how it works. You got a good product, you're going to buy it, At least in my view. Because like I said, I bought, I had X-Force, Spider-Man, everything. Cyberforce, Wildcats, Spawn, Uncanny X-Men, Jim Lee's X-Men. Like I said, Hellshock. I even bought, the Youngblood stuff that Jay Lee did. Like, I wasn't really a fan of Youngblood, but when Jay Lee was on it, or Platt did the Prophet thing, I got into it for a bit. But, your favorite artist, no matter where they go, you're picking up the book. So,
but there is an element too of the whole, like, go ahead, Fid.
I wanted to show you the picture.
Wow.
Yeah.
It's a kaiju, right? What was
kaiju?
Yeah. Yes, pretty sweet. Yeah, I was gonna say the like of that era, a lot, like you're saying, a lot of people bought books based off the art because maybe the story wasn't quite there. And I mean, that's always the meme that goes around with Image, right? Is like, yeah, everybody loved those books back then, but the stories weren't anything to write home about or anything, and nobody really was buying those books for the stories. I mean, I guess Spawn had an interesting storyline at first, and Savage Dragon. There were a couple standout books from Image that, at least for the first 20-30 issues or so, kind of held on with the story. But some like Wildcats and Youngblood and stuff, if you go back and like Wildcats doesn't get good until about like issue 20-25, but before that it's just kind of very derivative of a lot of the stuff that those artists and writers were working on beforehand. But the art was more than good enough to kind of keep your interest and your attention and be interesting to kind of like just as a as an escape or whatever, right? But it's like those guys all up their game. Like within a couple of years, that's when they started luring in, once the sales were up there and they realized, that the company wasn't going anywhere. Alan Moore and all these other, top writers and stuff started coming over and writing for those characters. And, like Supreme, I remember when Supreme started, I'm like, this character is such a rip-off character. It's just a Superman ripoff. But then later, he kind of comes into his own with a different writer and a different viewpoint. I think that's what's going on in CG too a little bit. Is like, yeah, there might be some kind of like kind of more that like where it seems like people are relying on the art and the eye candy to draw people in, but because people always make fun of EVS, like, well, you're not really a writer. But I thought the first Blood Honey book was good, just as an intro, reintroduction to the character, and as just the first act of a story. Like everyone, oh, it's a cliffhanger and blah blah. It's like, since when have comic fans not realized that like the first issue of almost any comic is almost always one of the worst issues of that run? Like there's nothing you can do in the first issue of a comic, right? If that character hasn't been introduced yet. If it's an old character, that's why Marvel keeps rebooting stuff, right? Because yeah, you get extra sales from a new number one, but if you keep rebooting the same character over and over again, you don't need to do like the dumb origin story. You don't need to do all those tropes. You can just kind of jump right into the action. Whereas a lot of those early Image books, they had a lot of setup to do and all that stuff, right? So you couldn't really get into the story until at least a couple issues in. I think CG's done a pretty good job of like actually doing some good first issue stories with good art and good, you know, keep you wanting more by the end, you know. So
yeah,
and having more pages to work with, right? Doing like a larger, you know, 50 or 60 pages instead of just 20. It's going to be a lot easier to tell a good first story. So,
well, that's what we're at.
Just a quick thing before we continue.
Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I was just going to say a quick thing before we continue on. Garu stopped by.
Oh, cool.
Hello, guys. I'm still up in the Smoky Mountains between New York and Tennessee. Y'all have
North Carolina and Tennessee.
Yeah. Oh, sorry. Y'all have a good night. Gotta leave here in the morning. Heading home to Hell Comics 8. Dude, Hell Garu.
Peace,
and
man.
Then Hex is here. Hail, Hex.
Hey, Hex.
And then it looks like Garu's going to talk to me Sunday night. Great. Great. Right, well, I'm in trouble thanks to you, John.
Why?
Just because he's got to talk to me Sunday night, so great.
Okay. Well, you know. I'm sure you can handle it.
I probably did something now. Anyway, go on, Touch.
I was just saying, I forgot to mention that, it's a 48-page book. So, you know, I'm kind of digging CG doing the 48-page.
Yeah.
You know, I realized the time gap between the next issue. So, you know, I think it is, especially at the price point, you know, 48 pages is enough with no commercial ads in it, actual 48 pages of art, you know, and dialogue is, I think that was whoever came up with that.
Well, because it's almost like 2.5, 3 issues of a normal comic, right? Like, because if you think of most comics, like, it's a 22-page story, but there's always usually like 3 or 4 pages of that, which is filler, you know, and, you know, let alone the ads and stuff. But you're lucky if you get a decent 12 or 15 pages of actual comic where there's something going on, actual action going on, you know, some storyline that actually has some impact on the storyline, right? Instead of just like, you know, we were saying characters hanging out in the cafe, or, you know, a full page of dialogue and stuff like the Tom King method, right? Where he's literally having the artist draw the same panel 16 times on the page with some giant, you know, 2-paragraph word balloon in each panel, to the point where it's like, hey, you literally just fit 7 pages, like 7 novel pages onto 1 page of a comic, and you think this is a good idea. Why? You know, whereas then I'm going to flip the page and there's going to be 10 word balloons and it's going to take me 3 minutes to read that page, but it just took me 25 minutes to read the page before. Like, I hate inconsistency like that. Like, if you want to get so far up your own ass that you're going to write all this crazy dialogue, I want that for the entire book. Like, I really want the book to be dialogue heavy. I don't want it to be like, oh, here's 3 pages of dialogue in the middle of an action scene or something. It's like, what? But, you know, it's kind of like everyone's trying to be, you know, grand literature or something like that in comics nowadays. Like, they've just lost so much sight of who the actual audience is and what they want. It's not that you can't do artsy fartsy stuff every now and then, or with a certain character or a certain creator it might work, but don't turn like Batman or Rorschach into this like crying simp, you know, like I don't know. So I think, you know, hopefully CG is like very cognizant, because the one thing I kind of still worry a little bit about is like what's that? I'm trying to think of what the analogy would be, but, you know, basically like you kind of end up you know, it's like that idea of like you become your parents eventually, right? Like, as a kid, you're always like, oh, why are my parents like that? And then you age and you realize, okay, I'm becoming my parents. Well, is Comicsgate going to become the mainstream? You know, because everyone's like that. They're like, oh, Comicsgate is the basic comic industry now. Like, if you're looking for good comics, this is where it's at. But then how long does that last? Does it have 5 years in it before now everyone's like, okay, well, I got to do something different, because everyone's kind of doing the same shtick, or everyone's used to my shtick, so now I'm gonna like zig when everyone thinks I'm gonna zag, and That's what I think mainstream comics, that's what happened to them, right? Is they just, and the same thing with the optioning. It's like, oh, this could be a TV show, this could be a movie. Well, what happens when people start coming knocking at Comicsgate? Like, hey, we want to option your story. And then people realize, because the trends travel around like that, right? Like as soon as a couple guys get that, then everyone's going to go, oh, I hope my book, and they're going to try to write a book specifically, kind of like what Image does now. All these Image miniseries are just, kind of like a treatise on how to get a new Netflix show or whatever. They're not really trying to like, oh, I'm going to make a book and see where it goes. It's like, no, they've decided this is just a 6-issue mini, enough to get my story out there and get a Netflix series, and then I'm going to drop it like a rock and forget about it. And just
which
move on
to me
the next
blows
thing.
my mind because number one, your customers come first.
Right.
You don't make money unless you have customers.
Yep.
They are your boss. In effect, because they're the one feeding you.
Yep.
And you're catering to something else. And it blows my mind because I'm looking at this Marvel universe, right?
Mm-hmm.
What stories are they telling? Are they telling anything that happened after 2000? No. They're doing the Infinity Gauntlet. What was that, 92? 97?
Yeah, early 90s, yeah.
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 They're writing stories where writing was actually
even
good.
Prior to Image. Yeah, it's pre-92. I think it's like 90, 91 probably.
And I mean, they didn't end it like, with the Silver Surfer and Adam Warlock, and all that. But still, the base story was off of when comics were good.
Mm-hmm. Back when they could do a proper crossover, like you'd have an event like that, right? And you might have, 5 or 10 other titles crossover over the summer or whatever, but they didn't necessarily overdo it. You didn't have to buy all the tie-ins and stuff. Now, of course, they want you to buy everything, even though it's totally inconsequential because the universe is going to get rebooted in 5 years, every 5 years anyway, right? And that's the problem, is there is no continuity with all, whether they say there is, but when you keep doing a number one every couple years, it's like even the readers don't even think there's a continuity.
Right.
Like I like issue, like, oh, well, I don't want to read issue 123. It's like, no, I do. Like all my favorite comic series all go well into the hundreds of issues.
Right.
I have no problem following.
Thing on John's little thing too. It would have helped, like, how in manga they have like a number system of what titles to search for and all that, and if you want to start off with the book, okay, this is the title you want to start off with. The comics, however, you don't get that choice because you don't know, okay, which one's the origin of the character, not because there's a reboot every 5 years or so.
And I'm cool with legacy numbering. Like that's the other thing. Yeah. Some people are pissed about like, well, this is another number 1 or number 5 of this new launch or whatever, but then it's got the legacy number, 238 or whatever, it's Black Panther 238. And they're somehow adding in all the Black Panther series, all like they're part of the same numbering system. And that annoys some people. Whereas I'm like, no, at least that tells me roughly where this story takes place in the grand pantheon of stories. And yeah, it sucks that not every issue of all those runs has the legacy numbering, but at least they kind of went back and realized, no, this is, like if we kind of kept with the numbering, this is where it would be. You'd think they'd learn their own lesson and go, well, obviously the fans want this because marketing wouldn't put the legacy numbering on there if they didn't think it had some sort of impact on the customers or the fans, right? So they think that that's important, but meanwhile, then they're still going to keep rebooting to the number ones, right? So it's a bit of a blessing and a bit of a curse, but I think, that would be the easy way is, okay, if you want to reboot number ones, just keep your legacy numbering and then just do whatever. These are mini series within the grander series. So this, because even the comics did that back in the day, right? You'd have a bit of an arc, right? And this would be like, oh, this is Bloodstones part 1, Bloodstones part 2 or whatever, right? Like all those Captain America, Spider-Man, they all had 6 and 8 issue arcs and stuff. And and they had part 1, part 2, part 3 on there. They just didn't feel the need to like, oh, this is like number 1, number 2 again, but it's really actually issue 324 or whatever. It's like, whereas nowadays, I think you could kind of get away with that more because the audience is a little bit more, on the up and up with that stuff. But And whereas with CG, it's like the numbering's almost completely gone, where it's like each book is kind of just its own thing, right? It's almost like the movie thing, like movie sequels got rid of the numbers. Now everything's about the subtitle. Oh, Cyberfrog Blood Honey, Cyberfrog Wrecked Planet, Cyberfrog Green Supremacy. It's like you can call it number 2 or number 3 if you want, but you'll never see it on the cover. And again, I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing. That's just the evolution of comics, but it's like that's the grand experiment of all this, right? It's like, what does the audience, what do they get a feel for? And whereas you got some other guys too that are doing just like the regular floppies. They're not even doing the 48-page books. They're just doing, hey, this is still just like a 25-page book. It's number 1, it's number 2, it's number 3, because that's what people are familiar with. So everybody's going to kind of do their own thing, but I don't think there has to be like a standard or anything. But
the one thing go ahead, I'm sorry.
No, I was done. I was pretty much saying, like, that's the great thing about comics, right? Is it is a grand experiment where you can try anything and do anything, and the audience at the end of the day is going to be the one that decides whether they're going to go along with it or not.
Another cool thing that I found with CG was like the Virgin cover, where there's no text. You just get to see the artist's artwork. There is nothing blocking it. No text, no, number 1,
right?
Or they're printing square box in the top left. None of that. It is just 100% pure art, and it's fantastic.
Absolutely. And it's not a gimmick where you have to. It's not a store exclusive where like, oh, you have to buy 25 copies of the normal one to get one Virgin cover or whatever. Because a lot of the Virgin covers in the mainstream now, it's always like a ratioed exclusive, right? Like you can very rarely buy a Virgin for the same cover price, or that's just like a B variant or a C variant or whatever. Whereas with CG, it's like they're not going to play that game. It's just like, hey, you want the normal cover, great. You want the Virgin cover, great. Like buy whichever one you want.
And they'll do the mix and match, like it's something I'd like to do. You know what I mean? You can get the 2 books for cheaper price or whatever. And then offer that. Exactly. I mean, the CG is, they're always listening and saying, okay, and you see these tiers change to what the customer needs. And on the fly, it's awesome.
Yeah, that's one thing I would like if I ever get to the point of doing a campaign with multiple covers, that the pricing strategy I'm going to use is like, if you buy one, like let's say you have 3 different covers, right? You can pick whichever of the 3 covers you like, but if you just order one, it's $25. But if you buy 2 of those covers, then you're going to get 2 for $40. So you're getting like $5 off of each. And if you buy all 3, you'll get them for like $15 a piece or whatever. Because at the end of the day, those books are only going to cost you $4 to $6 each to print. You're going to make a profit basically off of them no matter what you charge, even with that discount. You're probably going to get way more people buying multiple copies when you're giving them a discount. I understand why people do like 1 book for 25, 3 for 75, is you're trying to make sure that you hit your goal. But that's the thing about business, right? Is that sometimes you find that just shaving a little bit off the price will actually really kickstart that many more people ordering it, right? Because it's kind of like that buying mentality. When people think they're getting a deal, they'll actually spend a little bit more money that they wouldn't have otherwise. And I mean, that could be a flawed concept. I just think it would be one of those things that you could kind of like get a little bit more buy-in on all your cover options if you gave a bit of a deal when you get all of them, instead of just each one being 25 each. Because even just for myself, like I know that sometimes is the kicker for me. It's like, well, damn, I want all 3 of these covers. I'm definitely getting one. I can handle the 25 for one of these, but can I really drop $75 for the same issue? And yeah, I love those covers, but do I need to be spending? And I'm in Canada, so now the exchange and the shipping and everything, so I'm going to be spending over $100 on 3 comics, and I'm only going to get to read one of them. And I mean, then now we're getting into the speculator aspect again. Like, are people just buying these books because, okay, well, I know I'll be able to flip these someday on eBay, or hey, the Virgin one or this artist, like not as many copies are going to get sold. Because I get sucked into it too, man. When EVS, he did that Wrecked Planet preview book, right? And so he had 200 of those like the draft copies or whatever, like his like the test prints or whatever, that didn't have the foil cover of that Jay Lee one. And so you put like 150 of them on eBay for 35. I just snapped it, and they all went in like, no, it didn't even take like a minute for them all to be bought. And you look now on eBay, it's like a $600 book.
Yeah.
Because there's only like 100, I think there's 140 or 180 of them or something like that, is what he said. But I mean, I couldn't not get it. I had a chance. Right. I'm sitting here, but then I'm like, well, fuck, I'm just like playing into this whole, I'm only buying it because I know it's going to be worth money someday because it's a low print run, and it's like.
Well, right. I mean, when I was a kid, I bought 2 of everything.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I
had one. I got one to read, and then one goes, never sees the light of day.
Exactly. And the funny thing is, people are like, oh, those image books will never be worth money. That's the crazy thing, is you can go by the guide, and yeah, they'll be like, oh, okay, Spawn #1 is like a $10 or $20 book by guide. But then go online and start looking at what people are paying for Spawn #1 in like shitty condition, let alone a CGC copy of it or whatever, right? Or the newsstand of Spawn #1. Like, I remember when the people were buying, or they were selling Spawn #1 newsstand for like $40, like even just 5-10 years ago, and people thought people were crazy. That fucking book goes for like $200 now, easily. And just a regular Spawn #1, even though there's like 6 or 8 million copies of it out there, I mean, that's almost a $50 book now. Because
how many of those are actually still around?
But I mean, for all us guys that bought 2, 5, 10 copies, which there were a lot, like I knew comic guys that they literally had long boxes full of Image comics because they bought hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of them at the time. They didn't sell them all. They just basically kept them in the back. They couldn't even get rid of the back issues. But now they're like, well, I'm glad I sat on these for like 25 years because now I throw them up on eBay and they sell for $30 a piece. Like those Pit issues, it's hilarious. Like I was finding Pit in the quarter bins and dollar bins for years, and then all of a sudden Dale Keown comes over to CG,
and all of a sudden it goes up, huh?
There's guys on eBay getting $75 for Pit #1, and you can still go find that for like $2 at your local LCS, right? So that's what I do. It's like, I'm bad. It's like, I'm not going to sell. I probably have 35, 40 copies of Pit #1, and I'm not going to flip them online, even though I could. I mean, maybe one day when it's like worth over $100 a piece or something like that, consistently, I'll try and flip some of them or whatever. But you get caught in that mentality of like, oh, this is hot right now. Everybody's scooping these up. It's like either I grab it or somebody else will. I may as well. And if it's only a couple bucks, like.
All right. Well, it's like those X-Force #1s with the
cards,
Captain America labels. You had the black one and then the white one.
Right.
And people were fighting over, okay, well, which did you have? Did you have the dominant white one, the dominant black one? What, it was crazy.
Even funnier with that X-Force comic, when Deadpool the movie came out, everyone started snapping up X-Force #1 with the Deadpool card because they just wanted the card. So what did they do? They ripped open that X-Force 1 baggie and just took the Deadpool card out and threw away the X-Force comic. The card on its own isn't worth anything, but that freaking X-Force polybag with the Deadpool card is like a $30-$40 book, just because, again, the speculators and the Deadpool fans went and snapped it up, but didn't even bother. Like, they could care less about the comic. So now actually finding an X-Force 1 in the baggie with the Deadpool card has jumped in price, right? So it's like, it's weird how like sometimes the speculators or the kind of the normie fans or whatever, they end up kind of accidentally jacking up the price on this stuff because I don't know, it's just weird. And you're never going to get rid of the speculator market in comics anyway, right? That's half the fun.
You won't get rid of that anywhere, no matter where you're at, whether it's the market, whether it's cars. I mean, speculators, they're in every aspect of every life.
There was a guy talking about how, like, literally sports cards and comics right now and Pokemon cards, it's a better investment than the stock market. It's a better investment than Bitcoin. Like, the actual gains on these books in terms of percentage of overall initial value month after month is rising faster than any of these like stocks and commodities and currencies and things like that. Like, but meanwhile, it's like we're supposedly going into kind of economic hard times, right? So it's like, does that mean prices are going to come down because people are going to have less spending money? Like they're not going to be shopping around for these comics as much? Or does it mean that now these things are going to go up in value even more because it's seen as more of a luxury item that less and less people have money to spend on? So it becomes that much more kind of insular and less people collecting it. So it's, there's still a lot of room in that if you want to be a speculator. And I was just telling Fade this, like every week I go and I surf the dollar bins and the quarter bins. And like back in February, March, I picked up about $10 worth of quarter bin comics. And plus that my guy gives me a deal. So I basically get like 10 comics for $1 out of the quarter bin. He throws them in there like total near mint. Like he's basically just taking all his back issues that are bagged and boarded that he can't sell. He's pulling them out of the bags and boards and sticking them in the quarter bin. So like what was a $6 back issue yesterday is now a 10-cent quarter bin book for me. So I just grab them and then I flip $10 worth of books for like almost $400 just through Facebook Marketplace. And I can do that on almost like a weekly basis. Like I can turn a $2 book into a $30, $40, $50 sale. And it's like, I'm not even really trying. So it's like, and some people just want to read comics. They just want to collect comics. But it's like, hell, if you can make a little bit of money and kind of pay for your hobby at the same time, I say go for it, And especially with all these mainstream books, like
you and your freaking bargain bin, John.
Well, and then even in CG, like there's guys where they're like, I was talking with a guy on Twitter where he's like, yeah, he bought 10 of the honeycomb boxes. And I'm like, oh, you must be a big EVS fan. He's like, no. He's like, I'm flipping them all. Like as soon as, he put like 3 of them on eBay as pre-sales and got like $400.
But that's worth it though. That's worth it. That's totally worth it because you'll get your money back. I mean, I can't wait for my my Red Planet box to get here. I can't wait. Wait. It's gonna be so stuff because it's coming with different comics.
And that's a lot of value. Like, yeah, it's $200, but you're getting a lot of good stuff for your money. And exactly, if it's limited, there's only so many of them. So I don't, begrudge anyone for. But it's just funny that there are people in CG, like customers, that are not even into the comics or the stories or the characters or anything. They just purely see it as this is the next speculator market. If you want to get rich, just buy anything and everything CG and throw it up on eBay because there's going to be a lot of latecomers that aren't in the know early on and didn't get in on the.
Tell me about it. I lost a couple and had to get on eBay, and yeah.
And if it's, responsible, like I don't mind people bumping prices up a little bit, but there's some idiots out there that are just like, it's like they want 3 times as much as the next guy on eBay. And it's like, you gotta go on there and see like, what is everybody else trying to get for this and be a little competitive with it. Don't just be some dipshit that's like, I want $500 for this. Like, maybe someday. But I mean, there are idiots out there that do that where they're just like, they buy like the Xbox box, they don't even read the listing long enough to realize like you're not buying an actual Xbox, you're just buying an empty box. And then they go to eBay going, oh, I got ripped off. It's like, no, the listing said it was just a box and you were dumb enough to buy it for $800 or whatever because it's the same thing with CG. Like everyone's, oh, this is going to be super rare and blah blah blah, and then it's like, well, they're gonna reprint it in a year anyway, or there's going to be if you really want to read it that bad, you don't need to spend $500 just to read the damn story. You just got to wait another 6 months for it to come out in some other format. But I think I think the stories too, like I'm really also waiting for somebody to have a I think Graveyard Shift is probably the only franchise I can think of right now where it's almost like a must-read book. Like as soon as you finish the last one, you're really waiting for the next one, and you can kind of see where it's going. Like you actually know they have a plan for it. So, and I mean, I guess that's really one of the only books, I guess, that's gotten 3 issues deep where there is a bit of a storyline, right? Like there's not a lot of other CG characters or titles that have kind of. Can you guys think of any? Like, I guess maybe Jawbreakers a little bit, but that's kind of like in limbo right now. And
yeah.
Can you think of any other writers or creators that
no,
are doing
CG is just so new, right? That the properties are just beginning. So if you think about it, all the properties are origin properties. You know, they are the setup stories. Like some of the stories haven't even blossomed yet.
Right.
You know,
no, but I agree, and that's why I'm pointing out Graveyard Shift, because I really think Polton and Malin, they really did hash out a lot of the details early on, and they have a plan and they're sticking to it, and that's why people gravitated to it right away, and it's very successful. And I think that's also a big part of why people jumped on Godlike so quickly, because they realized, like, even though Malin didn't do the last issue of Graveyard Shift, they know that he's part of the grand scheme. Like they've heard him talk. Okay, this is 12. There's probably 12 issues long term in the story, and we can take any creature from horror and like put our own spin on it, and we're gonna do this and that, and you know. So I think there's just that much more buy-in. Like if you actually tell people, like, no, this is a universe. This is gonna be like a dozen issues or stories, and could keep going forever, then people really will invest in that. But if you're just like, oh, maybe I'll do a part 2 or a part 3, we'll see how it does, and it's like, well, it sounds like you don't really believe in yourself and you don't really believe in your characters, so why should I believe in you? And yeah, it looks cool and it looks fun, but there's a bunch of stuff, I've only got so much money to spread around. But I think with Malin and some of those guys, it's like people really, they dig deep to make sure they grab any of their stuff they put out, because they know that there's like a long-term plan with it.
And then you also have the delivery factor,
right?
You know, people who are actually delivering, because, you know, people are really, really tired of getting ripped off. You know, so it's a thing of, you know, am I going to get my product? You know, and if I don't,
how far ahead are they before they start the campaign? Because that's another thing Galen's good at, is getting a lot of stuff done before they actually pitch it on Indiegogo, right? So there's not a lot of turnaround, but yeah, there's a whole science to it. I think that not everybody's, you know, it's not going to work for everybody, obviously, but it will be nice once some of these the bigger, like the top tier creators, kind of create that template, that foundation for some of the new up and comer guys to realize, like, hey, if you want to be successful, just kind of replicate this formula to a certain degree, and you're probably, you know, get some good footing with that. So
yeah, and it's also you know, getting to know, you know, the crowd and what they want, you know, because there's a lot of good CG books that are poorly timed, you know, and they either don't come out, the artist has issues, you know, so, you know, like take for instance, the biggest one that I could think of is what's that that burlesque dancer female name?
Oh yeah, Martina Markota.
Yeah, the issue that she had with her artist was trying to you know,
claim
take
copyright
ownership of her properties. That's why, you know, when Mark and I work, right, things that are going to take prominence in the story get developed. You know, things like a street sign and something like that. No, but like take for instance, we have a thing where one of the characters is undergoing something and he has to enter a machine, then we dev that machine, because that machine eventually could, you know, land in a movie or become a toy or, you know, something of that, because eventually CG is moving into that strategy.
Oh, yeah. Yep.
When we're talking about toys, when we're talking about movies, when we're talking about, you know, properties that just go beyond just a crowdfunding thing, because, you know, CG really is the new wave that a lot of people, some people are unaware of, but also some people are fearful of because of, you know, the rumors that they've heard, certain people that they associate certain things with, you know, it not being able to separate a joke here and there, you know, and at the end of the day, it's a business, right? So you have a lot of people who really don't believe a lot of these lies that have been told about CG, because I was told the same lies, and until they were proven, I believed them to an extent. So, once a lot of the stigma is gone that CG is this boogeyman in the comic industry, the doors are just gonna fucking flood open.
Exactly. And when you, so in your experience, LA, like, did you, when you kind of first heard CG and you had that bit of reticence where you're like, I don't know if these guys.
Oh, I wasn't fucking with CG, because here's the thing. Here's the thing. Not only am I a black man, but my little brother that passed away was gay. So when you hear that you have a movement that doesn't like black people, they don't like gay people, you like, what the fuck? I'm not fucking with that. But it took me one stream in about a half hour. I was laughing my ass off. Right. It was the most fun I've had in a long ass time. I was in the chat. These people were fucking nice. And then I compared it to the ones who were telling me CG was this or CG was that. And y'all were the motherfucking monsters. Right. Like, seriously, like the people, the people who put up this facade that they're this, and they're here, they're the new Stan Lees. Y'all are the ones fucking poisoning the industry. Y'all are the ones that hate people. Y'all are the ones that are trying to control and do group thinking and shit like that. And that is not CG. And that's what I was fed. And it's crazy, man, because it's CG is just the opposite of every fucking thing that they say. That's why when I introduce somebody, I'm like, dude, you can Google us, but here's the thing. After you do that Google search, actually contact somebody in CG and see how we are.
Yeah, go, like, that's the thing, is there's thousands of hours of streams that you could literally just go randomly pick a stream, from a given creator or title that you're kind of intrigued by, because that's the thing I think happens a lot, is like people discover CG, like they hear about it and they're kind of, or they see one of the characters and like, oh, this is cool, and then all of a sudden they get hit upside the head with all these rumors and, oh no, stay away, blah 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 blah.
The crazy thing, I had a pinky toe in the industry. Like, I was literally just about to enter the industry, the mainstream. And then once I became CG, one guy was like, he said this random. He said two things that I found funny. He said, I don't know who it is on my timeline that starts following Comicsgate people, but it's not letting me see people. So from my understanding, if you follow certain people that are on a block list, it fucks up your following, right? And then the second thing that was said was odd was, this guy told me, he was like, it's so fucked up when you like a guy's art and then you find out he's Comicsgate. Like, how does that taint the art though?
Right, I know. Yeah. It's like separating the art from the artist, right? Like, there's a lot of people where they did heinous things, but they created great works of art or music or whatever. And it's like, yeah, you could just divorce yourself from that creativity for the rest of your life if you really want to. But I hate to tell you guys this, but I'm always gonna love Michael Jackson. I don't give a shit if he diddled kids or whatever. It's like his music stands on its own, and it's like, that's just the way it is. And it's not even like he's my favorite musician of all time. It's just like, I know enough that like I can in my own mind separate, okay, the guy was troubled, he had issues or whatever, he might have been a heinous freak, but you can't deny.
And then here's the secret sauce that these motherfuckers do not recognize. Okay, the main issue why they talk shit about CG is because of the exchange between your boy Zach and Mags, right?
Right.
What was the stream called? The Black Sunday stream? The
Dark Roast. The
Dark Roast, right?
Yeah.
They do not. Okay.
And that was private. Somebody recorded that surreptitiously too.
So here's the thing. If you punch me, do I not have the right to defend myself?
Right.
And the Dark Roast was exactly that, because your boy Zach was getting messages like, oh, your teeth should be punched in with bats. They were threatening his family, his kids, and things of this nature. Is a man not supposed to defend himself?
Right.
And they do not talk about how these people called his job an employee. They don't talk about none of that. What they talk about is how he reacted to them attacking his family. They don't talk about what provoked him.
Right.
You know, and that's a totally different story that they're not willing to have.
They'll always like quote what he said, but notice how they only know about it because someone recorded it, because it wasn't a public broadcast stream, it was a private stream.
Right.
So it was recorded so that they could prove that he said it. But notice how you never hear the clip. They always just want to say this is what he said on this show, but you never ever find a clip of it, because they know if you go back and listen to the context, you realize, oh, it was just a joke, or he was just being edgy, right? And that's a big part of the internet, is people, like when you're in a back room and you're talking with your buddies or whatever, yeah, you might say something edgy or a little explicit or whatever.
But what I'm saying is it was a knee-jerk reaction. It wasn't just, him trying to be edgy. It was people that trying to attack his family, attack his livelihood and things of this nature. It was a knee-jerk reaction, and I think
the only one who has a right to complain. Like, I hate when other people are like stick up for other people that they don't know or they don't have any connection with, or like, oh, you misgendered them or you this or that. It's like, who gives a fuck? You shouldn't give a fuck. It has nothing to do with you, and they obviously don't give a shit either. So quit being offended on behalf of somebody else, right? Like, that's not doing anybody justice. And then they went and said things like, oh, well, he should have been blown up by an IED when he was overseas, right?
Yeah, that was fucked up.
Oh, like, that's not any worse than what he supposedly said. But meanwhile, they're actually in the mainstream. They got 100 of their, mainstream pros retweeting their shit, and they think like that's not somehow more damaging than what he said in private to 3 other people that wasn't even supposed to get out there. And then, like you were saying, with all the CG naysayers, it's like they're the first people to say that they're racist. It's like a lot of these so-called woke people on the left, like the people that cry the racism card are usually the most racist people out there. Like, and maybe it's just their own ignorance, but you find, like, there was an interesting, I can't remember who did the video. I think maybe it was Fox News, but they did a man on the street thing, right? Where they were talking about during the, when that whole issue of like voter rights was coming up over whether there should be voter ID in the US, right? Before the election. And the Democrats were like, oh, well, no, it's because like people in the inner city, they can't get IDs and they don't know where the DMV is and they don't know how to use a computer and blah, 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 blah. Like it's, and then, so all these like white Democrats and like university kids and everything were saying all this shit, just being completely racist. Right. And then he literally went to like, the Bronx or whatever, and he just talked to, black people on the street, and he's like, do you have an ID? And they're like, yeah, I have an ID. You know where the DMV is? Yeah, I know where the DMV is. It's down on like 10th and 34th. Okay, how about the internet? You know how to use? He's like, yeah, I've had the internet for 25 years. What are you talking about, right? So it's like they spend 10 minutes showing these people that think they're all high and mighty and they're somehow protecting black people from the, from this heinous thing of having to have an ID when you go vote. And then he goes and actually talks to like black voters in New York, and they're just like, "This is all bullshit. Like these people are just fucking."
Well, it's a thing. It's a thing of like I said, but to bring it back to comics, it's just people need something to fucking complain about. Right. People complain about books, right, and properties that haven't even come out yet. They haven't even seen. They haven't even seen the property, and they want to fucking complain. It's like How do you know what food this dish tastes like if you haven't even tasted it yet? Like,
right.
And some of the most tasty food looks really disgusting. Like if you just base off of what it looks like and you judge it before you taste it, yeah, you're gonna think this is absolute shit. Meanwhile, you like Indian food. It's like when I was young, I was like, you'll never catch me eating Indian food, and it's like now it's one of my favorite cuisines. Like, yeah, it doesn't necessarily look that appetizing when you're a kid and you're used to like burgers and steaks and fries and blah blah blah, but then you actually get a taste of it and you're like, this is some damn tasty stuff, so yeah, don't judge a book by its cover. Don't it's just, I don't know, but that's the world it's clown world, right? Like nothing makes sense anymore, right? Everybody's got to kind of not just like do their own thing, but they literally have to like lie through their teeth. Even though they know they're lying, they know they're wrong, they'll still go along with their story just to kind of be on that side of the issue, which is very disingenuous. That's the thing I hate, is just people that are disingenuous and can't at least admit and like you're being honest. You're like, hey, I when I first came across CG, I didn't know what to think. I kind of thought this is shitty, but at least you went out and investigated it yourself, and very quickly you realize, no, this is all kind of BS, and you realize like this is just the gatekeepers, trying to keep people away from what they understand, what the other side knows is their main competition now, and knows is really kind of the
because that's what it boils down to.
Right.
It boils down to a lot of competition, and CG is a problem to the industry because we have new property, we got fresh stories, we got people that are actually doing comics that love comics. I mean, it's a whole different ball game.
Right. And they still throw that up too when they say, "Oh, you guys aren't. I thought you were going to try to change the mainstream, and you were going to try to like get all these SJWs."
Fuck the mainstream.
No, I know, but that's what I mean. Is like, but that's every movement kind of has its arcs, and it's kind of like its acts. That this was this era, this was that era, and of course when it started as criticism of what was going on in the industry. But that's the thing. It's like, can you fix it? No. Okay, at least now we can create our own little side industry, our own little.
But but you know what happened though? It started like this. Hello, industry. I'm your customer. Industry said, "Fuck you."
Yeah, go.
So we said, "Excuse me, what did you just say to me?" And I'm not going to give you my money anymore. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to make a better product than you had. And that's where the mainstream is like, you know what? These Comicsgate guys are a problem. That's why Comicsgate books can't get on Kickstarter. Comicsgate artists have to leave the main industry. They, like Shane Davis and John Malin and Uncle E's story and just artists cannot work and be associated with us. So we have to make our own properties because of the lies that have been told that people still believe and that haven't even been proven.
Absolutely.
All right. Well, why don't we go ahead and call it a night? We're already almost to that hour and a half mark.
Perfect timing.
Yeah.
Yeah, this was a good discussion we had here.
Yeah, it was. So why don't we go ahead and big in touch, find out on the means of where we can contact him or find him.
Well, if you want to email, you can do touchsensitivestudios@gmail.com. Obviously on Twitter, Parler, and Getter, Touch Sensitive Studios. So hit me up, and then hopefully by the end of this weekend, Sunday night, I'll be able to send out some pics and a 30-second clip for you guys to check out.
Nice. And then now we're to LA.
Bad Blood, the comic, is coming. I'm on page 35, baby. It's coming.
Nice.
It's coming. But right now it's just about getting my story together, making sure things are going in the right direction. And, my story is hitting all the right beats, and I'm just having fun, because at the end of the day, you can do it for money, but if you're not having fun, just go ahead and call it quits.
Here.
Now we got John.
Babe. Thanks so much for having me on the channel and for hosting the stream tonight. It's been fun. It's been great meeting Mark and talking with LA as usual, of course. So if you guys want to follow me, I'm on Twitter @AceticSmog, which is Comicsgate Scrambled. And still working on some stuff in the background too with a couple guys, and working on my own books. So we'll be, hopefully having some new stuff to show. I'm hoping over the holiday season. I'm kind of working on getting some art put together soon. But we'll do it again soon, hopefully. It's been a slice.
Awesome. Thank you for having me.
All right, and then Fade here. You guys can follow me from the icon as soon as I figure this out on right here on Twitter, my little avatar. And as well as I do gaming streams every Wednesday night. So if you guys want to stop by and see me game, I welcome that. And I'm still I'm still working on a story and all that on what I'm doing. So yeah.
That's cool, man. That's cool you doing a book, man.
Still kind of figuring it out a little bit. I'll explain more to you, LA, at least in a little bit. But Everyone, this is Fade and Guess, fading out.
Peace, everybody.
Peace.